Hello, my name's Gavin. This is Genre Books, and here are some possibilities for February reading. 1 month in, and although it's a long month with January, I have managed to break one of my resolutions already, and that is not to try to go into too many book reading events. There are a lot of events on. I want to take part where I can. I'm going to have to read a little bit smarter and have books count for multiple events where possible. The biggest event is still the Read What You Own challenge from Criminoli. And in an act of self-sabotage, the first few things I want to list as ones I'm reading don't count because they're pulp magazines. I want to continue to read the pulp magazines. Planet Stories, I've nearly finished issue 9, and that will be my next Planet Stories video coming up at some point this month. I will also try, if possible, to make a start on issue 10. But there will be other pulp videos this month. It's Valentine's Day, so I'm going to read a romance pulp. It's fantasy in February, so I'll be reading a fantasy pulp. And it's Filmtastic February, so I'll be reading a film pulp. Let's stick with Filmtastic February for a moment. This is a month-long event created by Annie at Obscure Book Adventures and co-hosted by Roy at Roy Reads Anything and Duncan from Back Away from the Donkey. There are prompts galore, and I'll share their channels below so they can tell you. I won't be taking part in all of the prompts, but I do want to participate in the event, even in a limited way. The first part of that is doing the film pulp. The second part is The Lost Worlds of 2001 by Arthur C. Clarke. So this is a mix of some fiction, some memoir and some diary about the creation, the contemporaneous creation of the book 2001 A Space Odyssey and the movie. And it is also talking about the relationship, the working relationship between author and director. As one of the briefer reads for this month, and I think sort of pulpish in its own way, is a satirical work called Jane Mansfield for President. And finally, for Filmtastic February, a book that counts towards my Bangsian fantasy for Project Rabbit Hole. It counts towards fantasy for Fantasy in February. It counts towards Filmtastic February for being a novelisation of a film, and will count towards The Wasted Weekend, the sub-event of Garb August. But it will not count towards the Read What You Own event because I'll be reading it online. I don't own this book. And that is the novelisation of Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. As well as the Bill and Ted's novelisation, I'm going full on Gardner F. Fox that weekend. I will see if I can get these all read during that one weekend. The Thief of Larn, so this is the sequel to Warrior of Larn, which I read probably 2 years ago now. And also from Gardner F. Fox, Kothar and the Demon Queen. So this one, hopefully, a brisk enough read that I can get all this done in a single weekend. Those last two books from Gardner F. Fox are largely sword and sorcery. Another term for sword and sorcery is heroic fantasy. Heroic fantasy is the genre I last picked out of the tote bag of mild peril and is therefore my tote bag pick for February. That's handy because A, those books are a bit short, and B, it's fantasy in February as well, so this will all count. What I've got is Savage Heroes Tales of Sorcery and Black Magic, edited by Eric Pendragon, with, I think, yes, occasional illustrations, and an edition signed by the artist. So this is stories from Henry Kuttner, Clark Ashton Smith, Ramsey Campbell, Carl Edward Wagner, and Robert E. Howard. So that's your sword and sorcery royalty right there. The man who actually coined the term sword and sorcery, I think, is Fritz Leiber. And here we have the first 3 books in his Sword and Sorcery, Fafford and the Grey Mouser series. So the Swords series, Swords and Deviltry, Swords Against Death, with a nice gouge taken out of the front cover there. Thank you, World of Books. And the third in the series, Swords in the Mist. Plenty of Lynn Carter as well, with his role as editor. Flashing Swords Volume 1 and Flashing Swords Volume 2. And Lynn Carter as author in his own right, with Wizard of Lemuria and Thongor of Lemuria, both of which will count towards Project Rabbit Hole, when I will be speaking at greater length about Lemuria. Fantasy in February, however, is more than heroic fantasy sword and sorcery. This event, which is in memory of Scott from the Bookish Bryants and spearheaded here by Gareth at Books, Songs and Other Magic, covers all of fantasy. This month, as I've said before, I'm trying to go for the thin fantasy rather than the big huge books, because I want to knock off as many titles as I can from the 100 I'm supposed to be reading. And I'll hopefully be starting this weekend with Moonflash by Patricia A. McKillip and its sequel, The Moon and the Face. Other thin fantasy books include Thomas Bennett Swans, The Weirwoods, Tiltangle by R.W. McElworth, and The Pastel City from M. John Harrison. Bangsian fantasy also counts as fantasy, and I've got a couple here to continue the Bangsian aspect of Project Rabbit Hole with the sequel to a book I read in January. This is The Gates of Hell by C.J. Cherry and Janet Morris, and Operation Chaos by Paul Anderson. Another Bangsian fantasy, which will get its own video or part of its own video, is Inferno from Larry Niven and Jerry Purnell. All of that aside, the BookTube events still keep coming. There is the Winter of Wyndham, another BookTube event from Gareth at Books, Songs and Other Magic. This one, very easy. During the winter, read one or more books by John Wyndham. In December, I read The Secret People. In January, I read Web. This coming month, I think this is one of his juvenile works. This is Chucky. Now, I have read this, but I think I last read this when I was 10. And I think probably because it was on the television. So, yes, I'll be interested to revisit this. I've only got the very haziest memories. February is also Holmes is Where the Heart Is. I will link all the co-hosts for this below. This is an event I'm not taking part in fully, but I will be dipping my toe. There is a prompt at some point during the month to read a pastiche, and this will give me an excuse for a book that I already have downloaded and allows me to continue reading John Kendrick Bangs, who I'm enjoying immensely. He wrote R. Holmes Esquire, which is a series of books about Raffles Holmes. So if this is some Raffles, the Amateur Cracksman, Sherlock Holmes mismatch. Conan Doyle was a Bangs fan. Sherlock Holmes had already turned up in the original Bangsian fantasy in pursuit of The Houseboat, the second of the Associated Shades series. Arthur Conan Doyle was not too keen on people using Sherlock Holmes, but he let Bangs go ahead. And at the time the Pursuit of the Houseboat was written, Sherlock Holmes was actually canonically dead. It was written in the gap between after falling over the waterfall with Moriarty and his triumphant return to the Strand magazine. With his Raffles Holmes book, I don't quite know what I'm expecting, but I'm happy to find out. Then there are the booktube events that I'm inflicting upon myself. In January, I read the Ohio River trilogy of Zane Grey. That is Betty Zane, The Spirit of the Border, and The Last Trail. That is the Ohio River trilogy, and that will be the first of the 50 Zanes of Grey videos coming this month. I also hope to read The Last of the Plainsmen this month. I'll be cutting back a little bit because there is so much else to read. I read a fair few Miss Marple during January, not all of which counted towards the Read What You Own challenge, but the ones I want to read this month do count. The Body in the Library, A Murder is Announced, and At Bertram's Hotel. All preparatory work for my event in March, the Marple Cinematic Universe. As well as booktube events, there are also the group reads, and I'm continuing one and starting another. Let's begin with the one that we're starting. So, The 1,000 Nights and One Night, The Arabian Nights, Sinbad, Aladdin, genies, lamps, flying carpets, probably beheadings, you name it, it's all here. We're only covering in February the first 22 of the 1,001 Nights, so if you want to join a group of us in this reading event, which is going to continue for about 18 months, please let me know. And I will be continuing with Marcel Proust's Remembrance of Things Past in Search of Lost Time. I am in search of lost time, or trying to make up some lost time myself, because I'm a little bit behind, but I'm still a good few hundred pages in. I do want to continue. I am enjoying this immensely. It's doubtful that I'll have time after that lot to read anything else. If I do, however, there's still some fantasy I can rely on, and fantasy that will carry over to the following months if I don't get to it in February. Arabesques, well, to keep the feeling of the Arabian Nights going. Lord Dunsany at the Edge of the World. Hannah's Bock Beyond the Golden Stair, and some fantasy books about Atlantis to maybe kickstart me on the Atlantis leg of my Project Rabbit Hole. I keep promising myself I'm going to read this. I will get to it. If not this month, then certainly in April for Spring into Adventure, if that's going. The Lost Continent by C.J. Cutcliffe-Hine. King of the World's Edge by H. Warner Munn. The Tritonian Ring by L. Sprague de Camp. The Magic of Atlantis. Edited again by Lynn Carter. I want to learn that trick that people can stay up all night and read, because that's where I'm going to find my extra hours. It's an ambitious list of reading to fit in 1 month, which is a nice way of saying it's stupid, foolhardy to even contemplate it. But let's not talk about it now. Let's get on and start reading. Thank you for your time, and until next time, bye.